Okay. Oh, who are you?
I'm Ed Lincoln.
Who in the world is Ed Lincoln?
What you mean you don't know who Ed Lincoln is? I'm Abraham Lincoln's brother. Ain't nobody ever known me.
I just wanted some food, TBH, but seems like you're already eating that.
You mean this is your cabinet? Oh, no. What year is it?
This is 2020, unfortunately.
Boy, I must have time traveled wrong. I'm supposed to be in 1854 right now.
Wait, dude, you're from 1854? I'm literally learning about that year in my APUSH class right now. I actually have a test on it soon, so you wanna take me there, maybe? Teach me some stuff?
APUSH, you say? You got a test on that soon? It's on the causes of the Civil War? No way, I'm from that time period. I'll take you there right now. Let's go. Okay, whatever you say. Where'd you go? All right.
Slavery sucks! Woo! Slavery sucks! Woo! Slavery sucks! What do you mean slavery sucks? Slavery is awesome!
Okay, so I'm guessing that this is the pro versus anti-slavery movement. Where's Ed? Ed? Ed?
Hey.
Oh my gosh, why do you always have to scare me like that? Anyways, can you tell me a little bit about the pro versus anti-slavery movement?
So basically, in the 1820s, pro versus anti-slavery forces rose. The abolitionist movement became very popular during this time period. Popular abolitionists such as William Lloyd Garrison, Frederick Douglass, and the Grimke sisters published books and newspapers that supported anti-slavery. William Lloyd Garrison wrote The Liberator, Frederick Douglass published The North Star, and the Grimke sisters wrote Christian Women of the South. On the contrary, however, pro-slavery figures such as John C. Calhoun and George Fitzhugh believed that slavery was good for society and argued to keep it. Pro versus anti-slavery forces led to increased sectionalism in America, especially between the North and South. The North promoted anti-slavery, while the South promoted pro-slavery. Sectionalism over taxes, tariffs, and slavery caused tension between Americans. Pro versus anti-slavery then led to arguments between free versus slave states and northern versus southern representatives in Congress.
Whoa. What's going on in here?
Well, here we got the Missouri Compromise, aka Compromise of 1820.
Oh, hi Ed. The Compromise of 1820, you say?
You betcha. That fellow over there, that's Henry Clay, the great compromiser.
You know what? I'm gonna ask him about the Compromise of 1820.
Oh, I'm really sorry, sir. Do you want to tell me about this compromise that you're making?
If y'all wanted to know about the Missouri Compromise, why didn't you just say something? Come right along.
Nationalism between the North and South caused by pro versus anti-slavery led to free versus slave states. Sectionalism in the North and South was growing over slavery, taxes, and the role of government. When Missouri was added to the United States, there was an argument over whether or not Missouri should be entered as a free state or a slave state. On March 3, 1820, Henry Clay proposed the Missouri Compromise, allowing for Maine to break free in Massachusetts and for Missouri to become a slave state. The Missouri Compromise kept the peace in the United States because even though Missouri was entered as a slave state, it was balanced out by the admission of Maine as a free state that had been wanting to break free in Massachusetts for a long time. Also, slavery was banned in all western lands gained through the Louisiana Purchase of the latitude of 3630. Although it had its upsides, the Missouri Compromise caused many problems in the United States. The Missouri Compromise caused increased sectionalism between northern and southern states. Southerners disliked the compromise because they lost their power in Congress over slave laws. Northerners disliked the compromise because slavery was expanded into new territory. These tensions eventually led to the American Civil War.
Okay, so I'm guessing we're in Texas right now, Ed?
Right now, it's the middle of the Mexican-American War. On April 25th, 1846, disputes arose with Mexico over land in Texas. President James K. Polk sends troops, and war breaks out after Polk declares that an American soldier has been killed on American soil by the Mexican military. And on April 25th, 1846, the Mexican-American War starts. General Zachary Taylor and General Winfield Scott lead American troops in the battle. Mexico is defeated in California, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah. Mexico is defeated in California, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, and Wyoming are given to the United States. The Mexican-American War was officially ended by the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo on February 2nd, 1848. The Mexican-American War brought new territories in the United States. This caused arguments between the North and South because Northerners didn't want slavery expanded into these new territories, while Southerners thought that slavery should be allowed to exist in these territories. This war trained leaders of both the Confederacy and the Union and also introduced a stockpile of weapons, which the South will take control over and eventually use to start the Civil War. My name is David Wilmot, and I designed the Wilmot Proviso. So on this fine day that we're in, August 8th, 1846, David Wilmot designed the Wilmot Proviso in order to block slavery, like he said before. However, the plan was defeated by Congress and it failed. The Wilmot Proviso actually further divided the North and South over issues of slavery, since the South wanted slavery to be legal everywhere and the North wanted to abolish slavery everywhere. The plan of the Wilmot Proviso also makes the South nervous and starts rumors of secession from the Union. This increased sectionalism from the Wilmot Proviso would eventually lead to the Civil War. Now moving right along to January 29th, 1850, we have the Compromise of 1850. The disputes between newly added Western territories given to the United States by the Mexican-American War eventually led to the Compromise of 1850. The Compromise stated that California was admitted as a free state, the South gets stronger fugitive law, popular sovereignty will be used to help decide future cases of slavery, the slave trade in Washington, D.C. is abolished, and Utah and New Mexico could decide if they were going to be a free or slave state. Now, there's no more Compromise in 1820, and everything in regards to slavery will now be done via voting. This will eventually lead to mass division and violence over slavery. Whoa! What is this? This is the Fugitive Slave Law. 1850. The Fugitive Slave Law was passed. The Fugitive Slave Law allowed slave catchers to go into free states and capture runaway slaves. The Fugitive Slave Law made it a crime to help a runaway slave and suspected slaves were not given a chance to testify or trial. This affected runaway slaves and free blacks living in the North because no one was safe. This leads to a massive increase in the abolitionist movement in the North and eventually the Civil War because of conflicts between the North and South over slave laws.
1852? Hey! I know this book. This is Uncle Tom's Cabin, written by Harriet Beecher Stowe.
Let me tell you about this one, Ed. On March 20th, 1852, Uncle Tom's Cabin was written by Harriet Beecher Stowe, who was a female abolitionist, homemaker, and author. This book illustrated the evil side of slavery to the public. The main characters of the book were Uncle Tom, who was a slave, and Simon Legree, who was a cruel slave owner. This book was published in 1852, and over 1 million copies were sold. This is a very significant part of the causes to the Civil War because over 1 million copies were sold. And this shows a lot because a large portion of the public couldn't even read. Uncle Tom's Cabin raised awareness for the abolitionist cause, and President Abraham Lincoln called Harriet Beecher Stowe the woman who started the Civil War.
Hey! We're in 1854. This is the year I got stuck at last.
Anyways, let me tell you about the new Republican Party. So, on March 20th, 1854, anti-slavery Whigs, anti-slavery Democrats, and Free Soilers formed the new anti-slavery party, which was called the New Republican Party. This actually becomes my brother Abraham Lincoln's political party, and it contributes to the start of the Civil War because the party opposed the growth of slavery where it does not exist, which angered people that were pro-slavery. Actually, let me say that. This becomes my brother Lincoln's political party, and it contributes to the start of the Civil War because the party opposed the growth of slavery where it did not exist, and this angered people that were pro-slavery.
Now moving on to a couple months later, on May 30th, 1854, the Kansas-Nebraska Act was passed. This act allowed people in Kansas and Nebraska to decide whether or not to allow slavery within their borders. The act served to repeal the Missouri Compromise of 1820, which prohibited slavery north of the latitude 3630. This leads to Bleeding Kansas and the fighting between Senators Preston Brooks and Charles Sumner. Charles Sumner gave an anti-slavery speech on the Senate floor and called Brooks out by name. Brooks then proceeded to attack Sumner on the Senate floor and was encouraged by other Southern politicians to kill Sumner. The fighting between the two senators showed that there will be no compromise between the North and South, and that civil war is inevitable. And now, coming right from the Kansas-Nebraska Act, we have Bleeding Kansas, which occurred from 1856 to 1865. The Kansas-Nebraska Act in the past led to slavery and abolitionist forces to resort to violence. There was a border war between Kansas and Missouri, and pro- and anti-slavery forces argued and killed each other over whether or not slavery should be allowed in Kansas. Bleeding Kansas really became a dress rehearsal for the Civil War between pro- and anti-slavery forces. And moving right along from Bleeding Kansas, we have the Dred Scott v. Sanford case in 1857. Dred Scott was a slave who argued that because he lived on free land, he should be a free man. He sues for freedom based on the Northwest Ordinance and Missouri Compromise. The court ruled that slaves are not citizens, they are property, and slavery cannot be banned because it goes against the Fifth Amendment right to own property. They also ruled that Missouri Compromise is officially unconstitutional. These rulings outraged abolitionists in the North, and they saw the Supreme Court's ruling as a way to stop the debate over slavery. And coming up right after the Dred Scott v. Sanford case, we have the Lincoln-Douglas debates. These debates occurred from August 21st, 1858 to October 15th, 1858. The Lincoln-Douglas debates were a series of 7 debates over slavery issues between Stephen Douglas, who was a Democrat, and Abraham Lincoln, who was a Republican. Douglas issues the Freeport Doctrine that states that slavery needs certain laws in order to exist. Don't pass those laws and there will be no slavery. Douglas wins the election, but Lincoln gained national fame and will run for president in 1860. These debates caused conflicts over slavery laws, which contributed to the start of the Civil War. The Lincoln-Douglas debates eventually led to John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry between October 16th and October 18th of 1859. A small group of men attacked the town of Harper's Ferry in Virginia in order to seize weapons to give to slaves to start a rebellion. Brown was an extreme abolitionist who thought that if he supplied weapons to slaves, they would escape. These men were caught by General Robert E. Lee and captured. John Brown was put on trial and put to death for treason. Death makes him a martyr for the abolitionist cause. Many Southerners thought Brown represented Northerners who wanted to control the Southern lifestyle and economy. About a year after John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry, the 1860 election came. Abraham Lincoln versus Stephen Douglas ran against each other. Slavery divided the parties up. Lincoln pledges to stop the spread of slavery, but not to interfere with the South. Douglas got support of the Northern Democrats, based off of his Freeport Doctrine stance, and the other candidates, John Breckinridge, got Southern Democrats because he wanted to keep slavery as it is. John Bell was nominated by the Constitutional Union Party. Lincoln wins despite not getting a single electoral vote from the South. South Carolina seceded the Union, starting the Confederacy. 10 other states will eventually join as well. This division would eventually lead to the Civil War. After South Carolina seceded from the Union during the 1860 election, on February of 1861, other southern states decided to secede from the Union as well in fear of government where they have no voice. South Carolina was the first southern state to secede from the Union, and 6 others follow immediately. There's a total of 11 southern states that will secede. These southern states formed the Confederate States of America before Lincoln even takes office. Jefferson Davis is elected Confederate president, and the Civil War will start the next year. All of the fighting and increased sectionalism over slavery and other issues between the North and the South and other American citizens will eventually lead to the start of the Civil War. Between April 12th and April 13th of 1861, Lincoln tried to send supplies and aid to soldiers who refused to vacate at a Union fort in Confederate territory. Confederates noticed and fired on the fort. This was the first battle of the Civil War, and it forced wavering states to choose sides.
Wow. Sure did learn a lot about the causes of the Civil War.